Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is part two of a talk on how we need to rebuild the social sciences on foundations of Islamic epistemology. In part one of this talk, we discussed how wars between the Protestants and Catholics led to loss of faith in Christianity, and in turn, this led to the necessity of rebuilding the entire stock of human knowledge on new foundations. So, the new foundations that were found were secular, dispensed with Christianity, but they incorporated a set of very worldly values which are directly opposed to Islamic values. That's why we need to rebuild this stock of knowledge on sound moral foundations. Imam al-Ghazali starts from the position that how can we find the truth? There are many different people, all of them claim to have the truth. So if we start from zero, can we get to the truth? He realized that our senses and our logic are not sufficient to arrive at the truth. And in fact, there is no way to get to the truth except by the nur of Allah. So this is the conclusion that if we want to get the truth, the only way is by the heart being inspired by the nur of Allah. Descartes copied these arguments from Imam al-Ghazali, but misses the central point. He also starts with the central position that we start with position of complete doubt, not knowing anything. And he says that our senses are not reliable, again copying arguments of Imam al-Ghazali, but he considers that reason is reliable. And so he reasons his way to the belief that I exist. Now, in fact, his reason is wrong. The line of reasoning he uses is wrong because when he says, I think, therefore I am, the premise, I think, already contains the I and the existence of the I, which is the conclusion. So he has not really used a sound logic here. So European theories of knowledge base on either the senses or on logic. The senses are the empiricists, and the logic is the rationalist. And in 20th century, logical positivism combined these two. But this is something that was already rejected by Imam al-Ghazali. So Imam al-Ghazali said that the heart is the key to knowledge. And the Quran also mentions that it is not their eyes which are blind, but the hearts. But Descartes and all Western philosophers and the entire intellectual tradition of the West rejects the heart as a source of knowledge. And therefore, they have been seriously wrong in terms of the sources of human knowledge. The Quran and the Hadith point to the central importance of the heart as an instrument for learning about the world we live in. So the West continues to follow the path that it is our intellect, the logic and the senses. This is what logical, which leads to all knowledge. Whereas Imam al-Ghazali told us that it is the heart which is at the center of sources of knowledge. Western theories of knowledge were developed on the basis of three important historical factors. The religious wars led to loss of faith, which led to the heartless knowledge that is at the basis of secular modernity. The Industrial Revolution led to a market mentality where everything is for sale, and so wealth acquires a primary importance. It is the goal of life. And conquest of the globe led to a superiority complex, which led them to disregard and ignore other sources of wisdom and to think of themselves as the sole source of wisdom on the planet. It is extremely important to realize that the answer to the question of what is knowledge was changed in the West dramatically. Initially, knowledge included all of the things that we are part of our life experiences. But later, in the early 20th century, the positivists said that science is the only source of knowledge, and all other things are not part of knowledge. So in particular, our feelings, our life experiences, our emotions, our heart is not part of knowledge. This led to the abandonment of character development as a goal of education. And the current purely technical education, which is dominant over the world, is a result of this theory of knowledge. So skipping over the analysis, what are the problems we face and what are the solutions to them? Well, because of our Western education, we have suffered from a loss of faith because this education teaches us to emphasize pleasure, power, profits as life goals, and tells us that the Western knowledge is the only source of real knowledge in the world. Also, the economic system we live in leads to a consumer society and a market mentality where everything is for sale and money is the highest value. And the global domination that continues of Europe and European thought and power leads us to believe that we are inferior and that therefore we must follow the ways of the winners in order to arrive at success. So the key question is, how can we free our minds from these illusions? So as an exercise, what we need to do is to focus on the opposite extremes of the Western ideas. And initially, as an exercise, we should not look for balanced point of view. We should look for the opposite extreme because we must push hard to achieve freedom. After we are, after we have rejected the Western ideas, then we can strive for balance. At the moment, we are so deeply trapped in the Western perspective that there's no chance, there's no danger of uh, lack of balance. So our first priority must be breaking the spell of Western knowledge. Western education teaches us that science is the only valid form of knowledge by only teaching us this thing. But science cannot tell us how the universe was created because this is part outside the scope of science. Uh, what happened before the universe was born is not part of science. So, who created the universe? What is the best way to spend the precious few moments that we have of life? And how can we develop the capabilities inside us? Science cannot answer these questions because it's only concerned with external reality, not with our insides. Islam teaches us the study of our inner world, which is the key to learning how to live in the best possible way. As the Western hegemony breaks down, we are now developing new forms of knowledge built on Islamic foundations, and uh, these foundations are radically different from the Western epistemological foundations, which are based on a Eurocentric and racist view of the world. One of the rapidly developing fields of knowledge is Islamic psychology, which is based on aql, nafs, ruh, and qalb. And these are categories which don't exist in Western psychology, which is based on radically different misconceptions about the nature of human beings. Similarly, Islamic economics, when done correctly, is built on radically different foundations, whereas capitalism is built on greed, individualism, competition, search for worldly pleasures. Islamic economics is built on the opposite principle of generosity, cooperation, social responsibility, and success in the akhirah as the goal of life. A complex framework for rebuilding the social sciences has been developed by Dr. Recep Turk. Multiplexity, which is actually Maratibul Ulum in original Arabic, it shows that the knowledge that we have is complex and layered, and Islam allows us for a much more sophisticated approach to development of knowledge than the Western binaries of something is either true or false. I have developed a course on real statistics, a radical approach, which explains how Western statistics is built on the wrong foundations because they take a positivist approach that the appearances are all that matters. So, because of this misconception, statistics is confined to the analysis of numbers alone, because the numbers measure the appearances. But real statistics uh, must go beyond the numbers to the hidden underlying real structures which generate the numbers. This leads to an entirely different way to do statistics. So basically, in all areas of the social sciences, the social sciences were built in Europe by rejection of Christianity as a way of public guidance, because the use of Christianity for the public domain led to continuous wars. So Christianity was abandoned and social sciences were developed as a secular way of living the public life. The politics, economics, and social institutions were rebuilt on secular foundations. So basically, social science is the replacement for Christianity that was developed in Europe. And it is a deen, a way of life, and not a science. But we have our own deen, which is based on Islam, and we must use this to construct an alternative to Western social science. Here are a couple of references which show that social science is not what it claims to be. Whereas social science claims to be universally applicable to all societies, it is in fact applicable only to European society. And this is discussed in my first paper. And so there is an issue of how, when it is so obvious, how is it that Western social scientists claim that this science is valid and applicable to all societies? Similarly, social science claims to be a science in this form of a universally valid set of laws, like the physical laws. And this is completely wrong because human beings are free and they are not subject to mathematical laws of behavior. I've suggested that we need to develop our own Ulumul Umran based on Ibn Khaldun, which would be an Islamic alternative to Western social science. And the key concepts of Ulumul Umran is that we want to study the process of social change. This is very different from the um, social science of the West, which doesn't study change because according to social science, the societies are governed by universal laws which remain the same throughout time, so there is no change. But in fact, societies are continuously changing as we can see from our life experiences. And so we have to study how change happens. And one of the key insights of Ibn Khaldun is that the key driver of change is community. And this is again opposed to Western methodology, which is individualistic and just studies a community as a collection of individuals. This is wrong, and it requires a replacement with an Islamic approach. So finally, we will mention the Ghazali project for the revival of Islamic civilization. The central problem being faced by the Ummah is similar to the problem faced by the Mu'tazila, that they accepted Greek philosophy as being on par with the Wahi, because they said that Greek philosophy is just reason, and reason is a gift of God to mankind, and it is to be granted the same status as the Wahi, which is the Quran and the Hadith. Today, we think that the Western sciences are of the same status or even superior to the Quran, and the solution is found in the Ghazali project, which is first to build a strong faith that the revelation of God to mankind, the complete and perfect guidance, is superior to all knowledge that can be created or that has been created by human beings. Today, our Western education teaches the opposite lesson, that Quran is irrelevant to solving modern problems, and we can only solve them by learning Western knowledge. The second step is the Tahafut al-Falasfa, in which Ghazali showed that the existing philosophers, Greek philosophers, full of contradictions and holes and illogic. And the same is true of modern Western social science, that it is full of illogic and contradictions and confusions. And so it must be rejected. And the third step is Ahya Ulumuddin, that is to rebuild the stock of human knowledge on Islamic epistemological foundations. So to conclude this lecture, we should realize that the central battleground is that of knowledge. Allah Ta'ala gave complete and perfect guidance for mankind. And He said that Allama al-insana ma lam ya'lam. He gave mankind a knowledge which they did not have. Today the West claims that they have a knowledge which mankind does not have. And our colonized minds accept this claim and believe that Western knowledge is superior to the Quranic knowledge. The Quran actually does provide complete and perfect guidance for our modern problems, but this is a claim which needs to be proven. We need to show that we can build knowledge on the foundation of the Quran, which is superior to the best that the West has to offer. But this is something which has not been done, In earlier slides, I showed how beginnings have been made in every area: psychology, in statistics, in economics, and sociology, and in general framework for social sciences. But these buildings, these have to be pursued and these have to be implemented in the education being provided in the Islamic world. That is the greatest task which faces the Ummah today.